Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is February 24th, YC125, and this is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, 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 guys. Man, it has been too long. This week has been crazy. There's been a lot of things that have gotten in the way. My son was sick at the beginning of the week. Then we had a snow day. There's still snow on the ground because the world is flipped upside down. But it's okay because we're here today and we have some things to talk about. So we don't have a lot of time. So I do want to just kind of chill out for just a couple minutes, hang out with everybody, say hi. But then we want to jump straight into it because I've got two topics. Thank you. Two topics to dig into today. I have today's world news, which is going to be important, or rather New Eden news. We'll read that, and I'll give some first reactions to that. But there are some things that we're going to need to dig into it later, like another time, in order to get some of the details. I can already tell. There's some rabbit holes to dig into when it comes to this latest world New Eden news. However, it just so happens that some of the stuff that you would want to dig into for this world news, or New Eden news, they changed its name, by the way, is about our good friend over in the Federation, none other than Celis Agard. So this is what I worked on yesterday. I was going to... So one of the things I've been thinking about, because the edited videos of my other videos have been doing very well, that I should go back... You know, I get asked all the time to do a video on a topic that I've already done a video on, but at the same time, like, it's hard to find, like, sort out which ones of my old videos.
Hello, Moto.
Oh, that's my son's school. Hold on. All right, well, turns out my son is still not feeling well, so I'm going to have to figure out whether or not, we're going to have to improvise a little bit. Hold on one second. Hey. All right, well. No, well, the school calls me fairly often. My son has autism, so they call me about all kinds of different things that happen. But apparently he has basically just not been feeling well most of the day. I don't have a car to go pick him up, though, so I have to see whether or not somebody else can go pick him up. But I'm going to, for now, we can at least proceed with where we're at. I'm going to at least do the world news, and we'll see what we're going on from there. But I guess we're officially on playing it by ear mode. Yeah. Changing the name. What? Either way. So today, I did want to showcase to you guys that, well, actually, that's actually in the wrong link. Hold on. Ah! Well, this is great. Hold on. Sure. All right. This is good. This is good entertainment right here. All right. So at the very least, I do want to show you guys this as well. This is my Celis Agard page. I've kind of taken every single event. So that's what we're going to also walk through today, or soon, I guess, apparently. Maybe. We'll have to see. But it starts all the way in 2011. Oh! Well, I mean, they changed the name after I mean, not after, but like, it's true. I kind of clowned on them a little bit that it was called World News, when like the concept of a world doesn't quite make sense in a cluster. So they changed it to New Eden News, which is more accurate when they switched it over to the new lore portal. I just continue to default back to the old name. Any rate, so I was going through my old, like, I wanted to go back through and find this edit. Well, it's the NNN, but I did this video on Celis Agard before, and so I was like, okay, I'll just go back through and I'll edit down that video and then just re-release it. And then I realized that, like, as I was watching it, very quickly I realized that, like, I kind of stagger through it, and this happens all before, like, the events of Uprising and all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to go back and really sketch out, because one of the things I've been thinking about focusing on, is doing a series on each of the different leaders, right? Like a biopic, effectively, on each of the different empires' leaders, because it seems like they're really establishing strong characters, and I wanted to, like, try to highlight some of that, where each leader has their rivals, each their supporters, you know, these kind of go-to secondary characters that keep showing up in different things. Like, you could say that, you know, Serdan Serkosh is an agent of Empress Caddis Mercon, whereas, you know, Belleron is a detractor of Celis Agard. So I wanted to kind of help set the scene for how the different characters play out. And so I was going to start with Celis Agard. And so, unfortunately, this story does begin, like, in 2009. Are you going to write the same amount for each? I don't know, man. The thing is that I'm going to have to do it as much as I can for each one, right? Because, like, so I'm just, without having done it, I know that there's going to be a lot of there's not going to be a lot of information comparatively on the current Caldari leader, Ahimakasraki, because, like, he kind of came out of nowhere during the invasions, and that's kind of the point. So we can look at that. But, like, Celis Agard has history going back to 2009. Malatu Shakor has been Samatar since 2008. Hey, thank you for that. Empress Caddis Mercon has at least been making appearances since 2010. So those characters have much more concrete stories, allies, and detractors. The state is a bit more nebulous. But I started out with Celis Agard because, A, I kind of know her pretty good, but also she seems to be the one of the four that they've done the most recent development of, while at the same time, a lot of her backstory and a lot of the interpretation of what is going on stems back to things that happened in 2009 and 2014. So those two facts together really told me that, like, Celis Agard is the person for me to focus on first, right? That seems to be ash bait. Let me check real quick. All right. So that's why we wanted to do that. But, hey, Cone07. So like I said, I still don't know how long I'm going to be able to stream today because of everything going on. My son is apparently still sick. I'm actually, kind of, I don't want to get, like, people, but, like, he's got a rash or whatever. It's not just like a normal sickness. I'm starting to be like, oh crap, we need to actually probably deal with something. But he was feeling better yesterday. But apparently he's like totally wiped out today. So. But you know what? I will say this. Because there are people saying nice things, loving all the content and all that stuff in the comments right now. And I get this a lot. I've been getting so much positive feedback recently. It really, really feels good, and I appreciate it. But at the same time, like, I want to pass that thanks on to all of the people who support the channel, the members and the patrons and all of those people, the people that send in super thanks. You know, people like LM1 who give away memberships and all that stuff. Like, I will say that, like, the transition to YouTube has been kind of whatever. I try not to go too deep into, like, my own personal drama because it's not really your guys' problems. But, like, you know, there was a weird period of time where I wasn't sure whether or not this was going to continue to work. And actually I hit basically, am I going to make it again in the last couple of weeks? And just today, finally, the YouTube money, or not today, but a couple days ago, the YouTube money came in for the month. So it just reminded me how much, like, all these people that thank me should be thanking those people that enable me. Because I'm honored to be able to do this. And I'm only able to do it because of the support of the people that give support. So, yeah. I hope I mean, yeah, he's going to get the help he wants. The issue is that because of his autism and because of, you know, past experiences with doctors and stuff, he really, really, really hates to go to the doctor. Okay. Okay, sounds like they're going to be able to pick him up. Let me call them real quick, and then I'll be able to do the rest of the show. Let me put on something for you guys to watch in the meantime. Hold on. Can I put on something for you guys to watch? We shall be here. Take your time. You guys are awesome. All right. That's not the one I wanted. There it is.
EVE Online is a vast universe, alive with the unrelenting activity and combined history of its players. Pursuing lives of adventure, warfare, and prosperity, they share this existence in the biggest single shard, free-to-play MMO of all time. Set 21,000 years in the future, Eve takes place in a distant cluster of over 7,000 star systems known as New Eden. It is a rich and diverse universe featuring densely populated havens of relative safety, governed by 4 great empires. Hostile systems where player alliances make the rules. Even regions of anomalous and unexplored space that hold their own secrets. You play as a Capsuleer, a revered breed of highly trained pilot, having achieved immortality through the use of cloning technology. You navigate the universe encased in an armored capsule deep within your ship, where you have complete neural control and function as one. There are hundreds of ships to fly in Eve. Everything from small, nimble craft and versatile mid-range vessels to formidable warships and colossal freighters. Each has advantages and suited roles, but all are completely customizable as you decide how to equip and arm them.
All right, we're going to stop it there so we can get into this. I don't have a lot of time, so we definitely want to do this. Also, thank you for that super chat there, Danny. Yeah, I did put a little bit of extra editing in to make things look good. I do have to put some extra... I did put in some extra editing to put in some good footage for that. So I really hope that people appreciated it. It has done pretty well, so it seems like they did. So, yay. All right, let's get into this. So, once again, before we begin, I will read each section, and then we'll talk a little bit about each section, and then we'll read the next one, okay? So, let us begin. Caldari State uncovers evidence of Amarr spying as diplomatic crisis deepens. Yulai, Genesis. Caldari State investigators have uncovered evidence of Amarr Empire's agents gathering information on Caldari efforts to develop so-called interstellar shipcaster technology, according to sources at Concord Assembly in Yulai. The Caldari investigation team is understood to have confirmed in substance the accusation by the Minmatar Republic of espionage carried out by Amarr agents operating throughout the joint Edencom and Concord Technology Intelligence Task Force. Investigators from Caldari Navy Intelligence are understood to have been working closely with operatives of Archive K of the House of Records, an organization believed to be a secret intelligence and security agency answering to the chairman of the Chief Executive Panel, Akimaka Saraki. The investigation team has apparently gathered material, data, and testimony to be used in a report on the Edencom Concord Task Force that Caldari delegate Menz Repala, CEO of Ishikone Corporation, intends to present into a closed session of the Concord Assembly. As news of the Caldari findings emerged, it was also reported that Royal Heir Hamadeh Kodor has been recalled to Amarr Prime for a meeting of the Privy Council and, quote, consultation with Empress Katniss I. Minmatar Ambassador Kaiten Yun has urged a, quote, full investigation into Edencom and AG-12's technology monitoring office by independent parties, end quote. Although it is unclear which independent parties would be in position to carry out an adequate inquiry. Gallente Ambassador Devin Malatate has continued to press the Federation's position that, quote, this incident shows the wisdom of the technology sharing treaties and the importance of enforcing them and the general interstellar order, end quote. The Federation position has been described by Republic parliamentarian and Concord Assembly Representative Tobias Ifrit as repugnantly disingenuous and self-serving hypocrisy. Representative Ifrit made its remarks to reporters as he departed for a security conference between Caldari and Minmatar officials in the Arakan system. So, minor spoiler, that last line, and some of this does actually lead into the next video. Or the next report. But The interesting thing for this to me is this idea of like the Caldari and the Amarr. So historically, I've brought up before Archive K and the relationship between Archive K and the secret sharing of information between the Amarr and the state, in particular when it came to like their appointments within Edencom. Now, the fact that the organizations themselves do not seem to be in agreement with one another does kind of add some interesting flavor to the whole mix, right? Where it's hard to tell whether or not the agent that maybe the person, card player was in contact with that is now on Edencom, was he fully aligned with the Caldari? How much of the Caldari Amarr intelligence sharing process has been ongoing? Has that ended? Where is this strain going to go? Now, a bunch of this has to do with the fact that the next event involves stealing of information from each other. So it's kind of trying to explain why Amarr might be stealing information from the Caldari and or Caldari stealing information from the Amarr, because the Amarr do have to steal, in theory, the shipcaster technology or the novel transportation technology from the state. So, yeah, that's a piece of all of this. It is also interesting that, like, Royal Heir Kador was pulled back at the same time while this whole delegation thing is going on. It's kind of like, they're pulling back their diplomat at the same time that everybody else's diplomats are going there. AG-12 is a department that is basically designed to try to monitor the technology sharing, like make sure that no one group, no one empire gets a technology above and beyond the others. But the accusation from previous reports is that members of the AG-12 specifically were operating as effectively spies against the Caldari by the Amarr to gain the transportation technology, or at least to monitor the status of the Caldari's transportation technology research. Also, the Gallente ambassador, Devin Malatate, who's been around for a while, has this position that, well, this is why information sharing is so important, says the person, the only empire that didn't end up with secret technology to be stolen by other people. So, that's probably why the Republic, who has secret technology that can be stolen, to call it self-serving hypocrisy. It may seem kind of odd for the Republic to be calling that out, but really what he's just saying is that Devin Malatate, who maybe in the past has had other positions, seem to be in favor of enforcing interstellar order right now, simply because that interstellar order is to the advantageous benefit to the Federation, because they're currently in the weakest position. Okay? Does that track? So that's pretty much that one. Caldari Minmatar Security Conference held in Arakan with Spying Row in focus. Arakan, the Forge. Caldari and Minmatar political, military, and security officials are reported to be participating in a security cooperation conference in the Arakan system, with the Edencom Concord espionage scandal believed to be at the top of the agenda. Reports indicate that the conference is being personally hosted by the Hasiota Corporation CEO, Athanan Osman, as the megacorporation station in orbit of the Arakan 4 Moon 3. Attendees from the Caldari side are also indicated to include members of the Caldari Navy Intelligence and even the secretive head of the House of Records Archive K. It has been reported that the representatives of the NOH's Internal Security and Suvi's Peace and Order Unit corporations are also involved in the conference. One confirmed attendee of the famed Minato Zumari, a hero of the Caldari Navy and founder of the mercenary corporation Zumari Force Projection, known to be closely tied to the Caldari military. The Minmatar delegation to the conference includes long-serving crucial parliamentarian and Shakur ally Tobias Ifrit, together with members of the Republic Security Services and Republic Fleet Intelligence. Kumatar Alec Barals, Chief Director of the RSS Planetary Security Commissariat, is also reported to be attending alongside representatives of the Tribal Council. It has been speculated, but not confirmed, that the Executive General Heike Torigo and General Hetman General Kenneth Filmar will also be present at the conference. The two officers are respectively the overall commander of the Caldari State Minmatar Republic operations in the militia war zones. Given the gravity of the Edencom Concord spying row and the strain that is placed on relations between the state and the Empire, this is much speculation that Caldari and Minmatar diplomacy may be looking to effect a realignment in the structure of interstellar alliances. And we get this lovely picture of Haika Torigo. Yeah, so this was really kind of interesting. So one of the big questions about this is that, like, is this going to lead to a realignment in how faction warfare goes? Like, is this going to lead to a four-way war? Is this going... Up until now, we've kind of seen a strengthening of the bonds between the Amarr and the Caldari, and between the Minmatar and the Gallente. But this throws that into, you know, negative light, right? Where the Caldari and the Minmatar... Well, the Minmatar lately made some direct overtures towards the Caldari. When the spying row was first exposed, Kainun specifically called out to the Caldari that the Amarr are not your friends. And so this could be why they're reaching across the aisle. The Caldari have had a history with working along for the Minmatar, especially Ishikone. So, you know, it's not unreasonable. However, the Minmatar also have the technology that the Caldari need as well. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see where that goes. You know, just because something is moving forward doesn't mean that it won't be disrupted, right? The Minmatar Caldari alignment is particularly interesting, especially as we watch, because the Minmatar Caldari pirate group that is closely associated with the Deathless. But this is actually one of the ones that I said that we're going to have like another episode or whatever. I'm going to have to dig into this because there are so many names here that are worth looking up for any sort of history. So we'll have to return to this one another time. Senators Kellen Ontbod and Shailene Ramnev visit Intaki Prime on fact-finding mission. Intaki Placid. A Federation Senate delegation visiting Intaki Prime on a fact-finding mission is being led by Senators Kellen Ontbod and Shailene Ramnev, both former candidates for president of the Gallente Federation. The senatorial mission is scheduled to inspect Federation military installations across Intaki Prime, but its first meeting with the Executive Council of the Intaki Assembly, chaired by Chief Counselor Vera N. Sulasio. Senator Ontbod is a long-standing member of the Federal Senate with a following in the Federation's Minmatar diaspora, although the Verrocchio artist and political activist is not universally admired across a large population drawn from numerous tribes and clans. Senator Shailene Ramnev was elected to the Senate for the subdistrict of Greater Arcurio region, Luminaire, in this year's Senate quintal elections, filling a seat that covers her old mayoralty of the city of Arcurio of Caldari Prime. The visit to Intaki Prime by the Senate delegation has been cautiously welcomed by Senator Suvio Belleron, who said, quote, "I trust that my senatorial colleagues will be able to see that the federal military overreached badly here, and that the Senate should resist and roll back the militarization of the Intaki system by President Agard's administration," end quote. Jonas Ivestara, leader of the Intaki Autonomists, expressed outright skepticism that this visit would, quote, "bear any but the most bitter fruit, given the Senate delegation's focus on talking with Federation military and the collaborationist Executive Council," end quote. So this one is the one that we've got a lot of, we're going to be digging into hopefully later as well. These senators all have a pretty long history with each other, and I think that that's a lot of what this is all about. There is a lot of controversy behind the taking of Intaki by Celis Agard. The senator here, Suvio Belleron, is a long-standingly hostile against Celis Agard and an political opportunist. However, he also seems to really like have a good position to be complaining at the moment, given it's his district, that is under occupation. Now, I do find it interesting, and we'll be looking into Shailene Ramnev when we look through Celis Agard's backstory. But Shailene Ramnev, it's worth noting that our Curio is on Caldari Prime. It's the second largest city of Caldari Prime. So this was the former mayor of Caldari Prime, and now the senator in charge of the subdistrict for that city on Caldari Prime. So there's a lot of interesting things, again, here to pull back. I also want to look into the Sulasio character, which I don't think I've seen their name before, so it might be worth digging into. But this is just kind of another, like, slow-burning thing. News in brief. Mimitar military station construction and ammo proceeds on track as Republic fleet takes delivery of new capital ships and escort vessels. Construction of the Amar HQ and fortifications in Mehithor enters new phase as Captain Marshal Zerdan Sirkosh inspects newly assigned ships. These two things make it so I want to go back to those locations, see how much more buildup there is. Gris's pirates launch new raids on Caldari State facilities in DS Tech M4Q Constellation, Syndicate region. That's pretty cool. The Grisses are attacking the new Caldari areas in the new constellation and Syndicate that they took. Might be worth checking that out. Serpentis Corporation reported to have brokered territorial agreement between organized crime and smuggling networks. Interesting. So the Deathless, who got started kind of striking out against the Serpentis, the smuggling rings, which could potentially, when we see organized crime and smuggling networks, we're usually looking at things like the Deathless's group. And so the fact that finally the Serpentis or they seem to have come to territorial agreements has some interesting speculation to it. I kind of wonder whether or not there's talking about having like a section of the Gallente or the like maybe part of the Gallente and Caldari areas, instead of being Garistus and Serpentis, will now be Deathless territory, but we'll have to see. Angel Cartel assault Nefintir Mining Association colonies in Carrara, derelicts stealing equipment and materials. Blood Raiders seize convoy transporting large shipment of war clone blanks from Fabai Constellation. Sisters of Eve reports a widespread devastation on Soshin as Sanchez Nation incursion breaches planetary defenses. Edencom Provost Marshal Kashia Valkanir summoned to attend Concord Assembly session on the Inner Circle President. Reports from Vale in Triglavian occupied Pochvan indicates raids on planet by Svarog aligned assault troops. Now, the weird thing about that is I think Vale isn't Vale Vale is in Cry Velas, not in Cry Svarog, so that's kind of interesting. Caldari residents on Sekenta 4 reports telescopic observation of, quote, battle in orbit between Perun fleet and gigantic rogue drone. Is Sekenta Perun? It is. So Perun are battling a gigantic rogue drone. Could be Velez related. Edencom monitoring station in Rarvos detects, quote, large energy discharge in suborbital zone of Rarvos 2. And I believe Rarvos is Kreisfarog as well, right? Rarvos is where Port Sorum is, which is where the broadcast from the guy from Vale the Triglavian guy. Gallente wouldn't align with slavers. I mean, yeah, I don't see the Gallente working with the Amar very much. Seriatim Foucault, that's his name. Yeah, Seriatim Foucault was there. So, yep, that is the news for today, February 24th, YC125. I have been Ashrothi, the voice of New Eden, and until next time, I'll see you in space. Alrighty. I think that worked out. You got it. Yay! All right. I'm going to do an ad real quick, and then I think we'll just, like, talk a little bit about the Celis Agard stuff. Good take. Excellent. All right. Let me know when you're back, I guess he says to the people that can't hear him. Let's see. Is anybody back? Is anybody out there? Hello? All right. Let's talk a little bit about Celis Agard. First of all, for those who may not know, let's just... Oh, 07. Thank you, hey, what's up, Danny? All right. Never left. Well, good. Let's talk a little bit about Celis Agard. Some of you may not know who Celis Agard is at all. Celis Agard is the current president of the Gallente Federation, but she wasn't always the president of the Federation. She was elected just in the last election, I think 2 years ago, I want to say. The Gallente have elections, I believe, every 5 years, although it's a bit complicated in the last 10 years or so, which we're going to look at. But I wanted to start doing kind of like an expose, a dig-in, a character portrait, as it were, of each of the leaders of the empires, and decided to begin with Celis Agard, who she is, who are her allies, who are her rivals, what are her goals, etc. So we're going to look not only at the woman herself and the things that she's been involved in, but we also are going to look at the people who both get in her way and have given her support for a very long time. So all of that preamble said, in order to understand who she is and what she does, we actually have to begin with an entirely different person. Allow me to introduce Advent Enterer. Advent Enterer is a dude who worked for the Gallente. He was the Grand Admiral of the Federation Navy. He actually ended up being secretly working for the broker. He was selling the broker information, and he ended up giving, basically bringing down the tripwire system, the Gallente intelligence network, which allowed Tibus Heth, the then leader of the Caldari state, to go into Luminaire and seize control over Caldari Prime and put the Shigemuru Titan in orbit of Caldari Prime. This was made him into considered a huge traitor to the people. At first, he was only seen as incompetent and was fired, so he went into hiding. He hid in the Amar Empire for a while. However, so in the state he was a hero. In the Amar Empire, he kind of took refuge, and he would have stayed there too if this hadn't have happened.
Wrapping up financial news, commodity prices fell on profit-taking for trading runs, but the manufacturing sector rallied on economic data showing a sharp increase in orders for Starship components. Meanwhile, an increase in mining yield for the period indicates...
We have a breaking story. This is live footage of the Rattlos border in Solitude, where Imperial Navy warships have just crossed. Wait, correction. We have reports now that those ships belong to the Amarian Royal Air Uriam Kador, not the Imperial...
Whoa!
They've opened fire.
I don't believe it.
Amarian Air Uriam Kador has just launched a personal invasion of Federation space, which just months ago was invaded by... I'm sorry, we're getting more footage now.
Okay, heavy fighting is underway between forces in... Look!
Military experts are calling this a sinusoidal field.
Hundreds, maybe thousands of ships are coming through.
This is a massive Federation counterattack. The Galentians are fighting back with everything they've got.
Look! A Federation Titan has just come through.
There's no escaping them now.
So, Royal Air Uriam Kador attacked the Gallente Federation. This was a huge deal, caused the heirs to basically be stripped of their navies, and was a big embarrassment to the Imperial throne. So, as a way of appeasing them, they handed back this guy. They allowed the Gallente Navy to come in and recapture this dude and bring him in. So what did they do? Well, then President, what's his name? Foroten and Mentis Black, he brought, they had a big rally where they brought him up in front of everybody and made him like talk and give a speech or whatever, and injected him with a special chemical that made it so that when they were exposed to a specific sound frequency, they would self-immolate. And then they had the entire audience scream and boo and yell at him, and had that sound converted into the proper frequency, causing his body to burst into fire in front of all of them. And this was the way that they chose to execute the biggest traitor in Gallente history. So, this is dramatic, even under the best of terms. And from this comes a senator who takes the position that this is bad, actually, and so uses this as an opportunity to propose a ban on public execution. This senator is named Suvio Belleron. So in 2009, March 2009, Senator Suvio Belleron proposes a bill on public execution. This bill is basically calling out, because of this execution, he says it's a shameful and barbaric spectacle. We must demand better of our elected officials so that we may set an example of enlightenment rather than savagery. And he is at that point identified as the Intaki senator. Okay. These statements drew sharp criticism from several senators, including Farron Shu. So now we have a Farron Shu, who represents a largely Yin-Mei constituency. Etur's atrocities demands execution. To suggest otherwise borders on treason. For justice must be seen in order to be effective, and the people need to know that their government is willing to punish those who commit such acts of villainy. Put a pin on this, okay? Farron Shu? These demanded this to suggest otherwise borders on treason, specifically calling out Suvio Belleron. Belleron shoots back. There is no question that Etur's death sentence should be upheld. The legitimacy of the sentence is not in dispute. Rather, the manner of the execution was deplorable. President Foroten broke the covenant with the Gallente people, making millions of his citizens complicit in the murder of a human being. So, the proposed bill, while not banning capital punishment outright, sought to limit the methods by which it could be used in the execution of criminals. The debate over the unlikely bill allowed Belleron and others to openly criticize their view of Foroten's self-serving populism. Yeah, the chronicle is 2 deaths, correct. So then, a little while later, a senator retires. This senator isn't that important. They're retiring from the assembly, effective immediately. Personal health reasons. But in this case, we see chief among those who was his post as chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. So the head of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee now falls to Senator Farron Shu, the second most senior member. So Farron Shu, who is a Yinmei, who is the Yinmei delegate. The next day, right? No. 9 days later, the Gallente Senate approves major defense spending bill. Emotions ran high as the Gallente Senate debated a bill which would have major implications for the Federation's defense communications network. Undergo a massive upgrade, blah, blah, blah. Opposition to the... but opposition to the bill was strident largely due to contract awards plan, the fund to be spent on a handful of corporations, pre-approved by the FAO. Allied Securicom is getting this job only because they're based in Black's home district. So there's concerns about Senator Mentis Black, who also happens to be the head of the SIO, or FIO. This is largely politics, plain and simple. Has anybody else noticed that it was an FIO study that put this plan into motion? Supporter of the plan rallied to his defense. However, Senator Farron Shu, chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee that brought the bill before the Senate, said, quote, "Without going into classified details, I assure you that the need for these upgrades is necessary and vital." So Shu's on the side of it being done, working with Black. The accusation is Black, who both is on the FIO, or runs the FIO, and is a senator, was connected to this whole thing being done. All right. When asked for the details, he believed Caldari forces could have exploited these vulnerabilities during the recent seizure of a number of Gallente frontier systems. Senator Shu declined to comment, because that's a comment about like Intaki and the Caldari takeover of that whole area and selling off of the land in 2000 or in the same time period, which is sort of out of the scope of this. All right. The final vote passed with a comfortable margin. Then, we don't see anything else for another couple of weeks, but 2 weeks later or so, on August 10th, Gallente senators call for Black's resignation. Increased accusations of counter-accusations of impropriety. A coalition of senators have begun publicly calling for the resignation of Mentis Black. Chief among the voices of dissent are Senator Julian Hevard, whose chief aide was arrested on suspicion of espionage, was frank in his condemnation of Blank's policies. It is clear that Mentis Black is using his FIO position as a tool for personal power. It is wrong. It must be stopped. So that's weird. I didn't really get too deep into this, but yeah, there was an aide that was arrested on suspicion of espionage. Remember, this is all years before the FIO dossier was stolen and handed over to the death list. So they're not talking about Leopold here. While Havar's disagreement with Senator Black is widely believed to be personal in nature, others have presented similar points of opposition. Senator Suvio Belleron, noted for his criticism of the method of public execution of Advent Inter, argued, quote, "Senator Black's dual roles in both executive and legislative branches violates fundamental rules of power sharing. By occupying both, he is disrupting the delicate systems of checks and balances that prevent the abuse of power." Black is not without his defenders, however. Admiral Savin Lecoeur, a highly decorated naval liaison officer, has said simply, quote, "Desperate times call for desperate measures. Are we so quick to forget that our own homeworld and most of our frontier are under Caldari control?" Lecoeur further argued that these situations call for decisive action. Decisive actions are not formed in a committee. Senator Belleron responds by pointing out that, quote, "As of this moment, no official state of war or emergency exists within the Federation. Without the approval of either the condition by the Senate, we cannot label these as desperate times. If we descend into totalitarianism, what is left to separate us from the likes of Tibus Heth?" So already we're starting to see these kind of battle lines being drawn, right? Senator Belleron is very much against kind of governmental control, and there's a lot of these people speaking out on behalf of it, including Black. Heth auctioning developmental rights of conquered Federation systems to Caldari megacorporation. So this is kind of what they were just referring to in this one. Scope has acquired a dated secret memorandum issued by the Caldari Providence Directorate. So basically what this is in August 21st, YC 121, or YC 111, which is 2009, this auction happened that auctioned off all the different places within the war zone. I think, and it causes a drop in Gallente stock market. I don't have the list here. Shoot, I had the list at one point. But the one big one that I can point out is, like, they had a list of the different systems. But the one that I thought was really interesting was that Ishikone only got one system, and that system was Intaki. That's how Ishikone got Intaki, was this event. Memorandum revelation caused a drop in Gallente stock market. That's the one we just talked about. Auctioning off Gallente, developmental rights is one thing, but what about existing Gallente-owned operations? So in response to this, the president of the Gallente Federation invokes Wartime Powers Act to nationalize Federation arms manufacturers. Senate calls for emergency session. So remember, Belleron was like, hey, wait a minute. There's no state of emergency. You can't do this. So then, of course, Fullerton declares a state of emergency. In what is clearly a response to Tybus Heth's auction of the captured Federation systems, President Fullerton has issued an executive mandate to seize control of the nation's arm manufacturers. So this triggers, the decades-old Hermont Act, which passed to mobilize Federation resources in the event of an emergency. It states that, quote, such authority may be invoked directly without approval of the Senate in times of extreme national duress, such as war or national disaster, for the express purposes of galvanizing the nation's resources towards relieving the imminent threat as quickly as possible. 410's invocation of the act implies that the Federation is of an official state of emergency. The Caldari militia has controlled several of low-sec Federation systems since May. President Office issued a brief statement that, by its interpretation, 410's action is legal, reflecting the action of a president who is determined to protect the nation from further harm by relying on less on uncontrollable factors and asserting more control for the better good of the citizens. So at this point, 410 goes, you know what, dealing with this problem where the Caldari have basically taken over the entire war zone and now are selling off our land basically for developmental rights, like, this is now a national emergency. We're going to, federalize manufacturing to get the Navy in gear. Federal Intelligence Officer Mentis Black has been assigned to enforce the directive, meaning it will likely be executed by the Black Eagles, a paramilitary arm of the FIO that's grown substantially in scope under Black's direction. It is unclear how much power the director can wield to enforce the presidential mandate. Meetings between corporations and the FIO officials are already underway, although Scope has agreed to honor a temporary request to refrain from listing exactly which specific corporations are engaged in dialogue. So, once again, Black, who is, part of the pro-government and theoretically part of, like, the I hate to say shadow group, but, like, the power brokers in play at this time. He's in charge of the FIO. He's also a senator. He just got called for his resignation from the Senate. And now he's being assigned to this position. Panic on Intaki Prime as moratorium spreads. The Intaki government has imposed a dusk till dawn curfew at several of Intaki Prime's largest cities following the widespread riots and lootings. Rumors have spawned by Tybus Heth's recent memorandum, which states that Caldari will be auctioning off development and exploration rights to occupied Federation territories. Police and planetary defense troops are out in force. Blah, blah, blah. Big problem. Tensions boil over Gallente Senate session. At issue is a bill proposed by Senators Miles Wu and Suvio Belleron. This bill's single provision was to clarify the separation of legislature and executive powers by stipulating that no serving official could occupy positions in both branches of government simultaneously. This was viewed by many as a direct attack on Senator Mentis Black, who currently serves as both head of Senate and head of Federal Intelligence Office's Special Department of Internal Investigations. For weeks, there have been increasing accusations of abuse of power by Senator Black. President Uta, who named Black to the FIO position, has been quietly supportive of Black throughout the controversy, but recent evidence suggests that this may have drawn his own judgment into question as a result. Increased public pressure has led Uta to become more circumspect, and many wonder if President will be forced to call for Black's resignation from the FIO post in order to mollify his own critics. So a lot of concern about this. Bill goes to deliberation tomorrow. At around that same time, at the same day, there's now a standoff between Roden shipyards and federal agents. Federal agents try to access the FIO doing an investigation or whatever, tries to access Roden Shipyard's facilities. Roden Shipyards refuses. Sources report that Jacobs Roden, the retired founder of Roden Shipyards, personally refused to allow federal agents to enter the facility. A brief statement released by the corporation reads as follows, quote, "Our position is that the president has no legal authority to commandeer the operations of this firm. The Federation's government is therefore trespassing on private property. We have no intentions on escalating this matter further, but we refuse to yield ground on this issue." So this is about the whole thing about Uta trying to, federalize all of the manufacturing departments, right? So Roden is, obviously the founder of Roden Shipyard, even though it's now in control of his granddaughter, Milios Roden. Jacobs Roden is also a capsuleer. Federation corporations refute nationalization mandate. Senate approves impeachment hearings for President Uta. So, with Roden Shipyards refusing, now Federation arms manufacturers collectively have refused the national mandate. This has further weakened the president's position. Federal Intelligence Office FIO Director Mentis Black has ordered federal agents to, quote, belay prior enforcement directives and stand down. It is unknown if his actions represented direct insubordination or if the order was issued by the president. FIO refuses to comment. In what many are calling the death throes of the Uta presidency, the Federation Senate voted by 2-1 margin to begin impeachment hearings as early as next week. This is the latest in a series of national misfortunes, but for the beleaguered president, whose popularity since the outset of the Imperial War has plummeted. So now we've got impeachment hearings against President Uta because of his actions. So they tell him that he can't do this if it's not in a state of emergency. So he declares a state of emergency legally. So now they're trying to impeach him. The Senate fails to pass a reform bill. So the Belleron Wu bill that was attempting to limit Mentis Black to only one branch of government fails in the Senate. Notably absent the most voice for his dialogue was Senator Julian Harvard. For weeks, Senator Havard has been a vocal critic of Mentis Black, but today his quiet demur surprised many. Equally surprising was his absence from the move to committee vote, which itself launched rampant speculation that he'd somehow been gotten to. Havard himself dispelled these claims, saying that, quote, "Throughout these weeks I have said what I felt need to be said. Endlessly beating the pulpit will change nothing." End quote. Senator Havard added that while he is not enthusiastic, he feels that the Ethics and Conduct Committee was an appropriate venue for which to refine the bill. Havard himself does not serve on said committee. So Black manages to avoid their attempts to make it so that he can only be a one branch of government, even as Uta is plummeting and heading towards a impeachment. President Uta to resign. This is 2 days later. Call for new elections in November. Senator Uta resigns from the Gallente as president. Quote, that both betrayals came from the Federation Navy seems fitting for the issues facing the nations today, says Vicar Delot, professor of political science in the University of Cali. The legacy of President Fortin, despite his administration's grand accomplishments in economics, culture, and technology, will likely be shaped by the decline of the armed forces and his failure to enlist Capsuleers more directly in the defenses of the nation. So the Gallente's failure to do any good in faction warfare ended the career of Fortin. President Fortin admits regrets. He says, honored members of the Senate, fellow citizens of the Federation, friends and well-wishers throughout the New Eden, the time has come for me to step down as president. I have served this great nation as best as I could. If I could somehow express what the Gallente Federation and its people meant to me, I would do so, but I can't. There are no words, nor can I describe how difficult some of the decisions were that I have faced, not just in the last year, but every day since I took this office. Any leader who serves for any amount of time will admit regrets. Let it be known that I certainly have my own. I say that despite the great accomplishments of the past 6 years, the ones that we achieved together, we have become the wealthiest nation in New Eden. We are pioneers in the reformation of worlds, and we have created a better life for billions of people. And yet, I am burdened by what we did not yet achieve, and the goals that we felt sure of. This November, you will elect someone to continue where I have left off. I will not endorse any candidate who runs for this office, but I will fully support whoever wins your final vote. I give you my word that our government will transition smoothly over your next elected leader, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that the voting process is fair. I have learned much of myself these last years. Indeed, we have learned much from each other. The greatest advice I can offer to the next leader is to empathize with the nation of New Eden. The nations of New Eden. Know that no matter how deep our convictions to liberty and prosperity, it is a sad truth that they are not universally cherished nor admired. We have become the envy of and scorn of many, and became the victims of our own success. And we have paid dearly for our complacency. But despite all that has happened, we must never back down from who we are. No matter what happens, we can't lose faith in the Gallantean beliefs that have carried us so well for so long. The tragic events of the past year shocked us all, but they don't have to rob us of our soul. As a nation, we have strayed from the path. I bear the responsibility for allowing it to happen. And I know in my heart that the Federation's interests are the best served by stepping aside, so that the next president can set us right once more. The Senate has accepted my resignation, which is effective in November. Until then, I will continue to operate the government in its full capacity. In addition, I have retracted my executive invocation of the Harriman Act. In light of this situation with our frontier worlds, I felt it was best course of action to help our citizens. I realize now that this was wrong, and I should have instead worked directly with the Senate and corporations towards a solution. The urgency of these times cannot be overstated. No matter what differences, we must work together to overcome the challenges we face. For united even now, in the final days of this presidency, we can, and we must, persevere. Thank you. Whew, that is quite the speech. So with that, he steps down. Senator Villar-Garrios announces presidential campaign. So immediately we see this presidential campaign begin. Garrios, his home system, Eglane. He's the first to emerge. Quote, our Federation has thrived in peacetime and advocated peaceful relations for decades. It was the folly of the previous administration and their obstinate refusal to swallow their pride and concede to moderate requests that brought us to our current position. Our economy is failing. Our people are suffering in the periphery. Continuing to be prideful and throw away lives and resources into a war that has become increasingly hopeless is the height of foolishness. We must turn the other cheek and return to the way of diplomacy that has made our Federation great. I am willing to pay a great price for peace, and I believe the Federation is as well. All right, cool. He's from the, he's a member of the Federal Populist Party. He's long advocated for open economic policies. Cool. Next, Jacques Rodin to announce candidacy for president. Does he have a good quote? No. Governor Selis Agard confirms rumor of presidential candidacy. So remember, this is in 2009. In October 27th, 2009, in Mise, a new candidate confirmed her bid for the upcoming Federation presidential election. Selis Agard, governor of the Mise system, announced her candidacy, promising to turn the tide of the war. Agard pledges to, quote, empower and strengthen outlying systems, and to, quote, eradicate the factors that have turned our great navy into a slow, lumbering beast. The announcement was made at a press conference held in Agard's residence, confirming a rumor that has been circulating Gallente political circles for the better part of a year. Governor Agard is recognized as the driving force in the development of the Mise system, and our work in infrastructure development can be felt throughout the Essence region. This candidacy comes in the middle of her second term as governor, having triumphed in her last election through a landslide victory. So here we go. A young second-term governor runs for president to strengthen the outlying systems and eradicate the factors that turn the Navy into a slow, lumbering beast. Initial reactions to Garrios' presidential campaign is mixed. Valar Garrios' presidential campaign is proven to be mixed, with supporters citing his positive reputation with the Senate, commitment to peace, and background in economics, while detractors point to his low profile in the Federation politics. Stiff opposition to the senator is rare, though political commentator RoAch Lefrene has been among the most vocal in decrying the anti-war rhetoric. The fact is, the Caldari state is run by warmongering dictators. Is there anything else in here that's really relevant to Selis Agard, though? I don't think so. Presidential candidate Agard holds political rally for Yin Mei. Selis Agard, governor of the Mise system and candidate of the upcoming Gallente Federation presidential election, attracted a crowd numbering in the thousands for a political rally in the planet of Chetcox in the Lersatin system yesterday. Agard spoke at length of her Yin Mei heritage and the promise to sponsor the development of, quote, fringe worlds and minority communities, end quote, gaining positive reactions from those who assembled. When frontier settlements starve under Caldari blockades and riots and panic spread among those who feel that they are voiceless, all our leaders can say is toughen up, says Agard in her speech. Fear is a powerful motivator, but it has failed to quell the governmental apathy towards the minorities of the Federation. Many of Agard's supporters agreed with this sentiment. Quote, I am a strong supporter for maintaining the independent cultures of groups such as the Yin Mei, Manar, and the Intaki, says Sifin Langanier, a civil rights lawyer of Lersatin who attended the rally. I would be ecstatic to see a president who gives more than token support to the minority cultures of the Federation. Governor Agard is expected to follow her tour of the Evershore region with several rallies and debates in the Essence region next month. So, just so that we can just verify, Mise constellation. Can't spell. Yeah. So Mise is a system in the Essence region in the Crux constellation, and Lersatin is in Evershore. So she is from Mise, which is towards the center of the cluster, but of course she has Yin Mei heritage, and so close connection to Lersatin, which is the and planet Chekox, which is the center of the of Yin Mei. Retired naval officer Darian Fascio announces candidacy. So now we have Federation Navy Rear Admiral Darian Fascio announces that he wants to step into the Gallente presidency. due to the ongoing militia war with the Caldari, quote, by failing to fully and immediately mobilize the substantial economic and industrial power of the Great Federation, President Fullerton has led our nation into a fool's war. It's not that we can't beat the Caldari, it's that we refuse to try our fullest potential. So definitely on the more militant side of things. Platform, if Roden cares less about his quarterly profits and more about the good of the nation, he'd have to been eager to comply with the act. How can we ask our ordinary citizens to make sacrifices for the good of the Federation if our prominent leaders will not? So he's calling out Roden directly for refusing to comply with the orders. Off-duty military personnel holds pro-Fascio rally. So now there's this big military rally on behalf of this new candidate, Fascio. I have the utmost respect for the man and all he stands for. I know his personal experience that he's capable of making the difficult command decisions, and he isn't afraid to tell it like it is. Politicians got us into the war. It's going to take someone with real military experience to get us out of it. So all these different people are saying all this positive stuff about him. Anytime we have leave or downtime between classes, we're out there spreading the word. Be it Galnet or good old-fashioned door-to-door interactions, we want people to understand the threats facing the Federation and the Admiral Fascio's plan is the best way to use our chief strengths to our nation, our dynamic economy, and our strong tradition of public service. So, concerns that arisen in the public endorsement of the party Academy faculty amount to political indoctrination of the cadets. Academy spokesman Gerard Olin sought to address that issue directly, saying, while the Academy itself does not officially endorse any particular candidate, our faculty, staff, and students are encouraged to participate in the political process. So why is this guy so important? We'll find out. Senate debates issue of voting in occupied territories. So now there's a question of like, okay, well, if the area is occupied, i.e. if it's currently occupied the Caldari, does that area get votes? The task of collecting, tallying, and verifying votes would be nigh impossible with the continued communication blockade enforced by the Caldari state on occupied systems. That is to say nothing of ensuring that voters are aware of who they're voting for and the high possibility of fraud. So they're basically saying that we can't do a vote with these people. You know, these people we can't trust their votes because like they're cut off right now. Senate votes to deny votes to occupied systems. The Federation Senate passed special legislations today to deny occupied systems the right to vote in the Federation election. The bill, which is expected to be signed into law by President Soroforten later this week, passed with little opposition. The only dissentient votes came from senators from Placid and Solitude. The bill applies to any federal territory occupied by a foreign power, which currently includes much of Placid, including population centers such as Intaki Prime. Presidential candidate Senator Vel'ash, who voted for the bill, said, quote, "This bill clears up potential messy legal issues that could have potentially invalidated the results of an upcoming election. Other candidates have yet to comment publicly on the issue. Those who must suffer under Caldari occupation are the ones who will be affected the most by the election. We should have looked into solutions for their inability to vote rather than passing a law that essentially tells them that they don't count." So then, Governor Agar draws record numbers to broadcast debate. This is 7 days later. In an event hosted by the Center of Advanced Studies last week, President candidate Celis Agard attracted the eyes and ears of nearly 19% of Gallente Federation's estimated daily total attendance. The show, CAS Profile of Influence, is produced and administrated by students of the Center of Advanced Studies. The program has been known to hold interviews with many high-profile people. The Agard interview was not the first time a presidential candidate appeared on the show, but Agard's rising popularity in the region, together with the show's recent syndication over the Egonics network, contributed to the show's success. In addition to having broken the regional record viewer record, the show also set a new record for audience for a student program. In the interview, Agard spoke about her mixed Gallente Yinmei heritage, and her career in Mise, as well as her plans to support fringe economies, as well as her controversial criticism of Concord. Post-show polls at the cast shows the increase in support for Agard and her policies, placing her behind Jacus Rodin, but ahead of Villard Garrios in the race for the presidency. Political analysis question Agard's chances following no vote bill. Agard's pledge to support the frontier settlements in low-security regions, as well as her wish for total military efforts to reclaim the lost systems, gave her a strong base of support in Placid and Vergevender, says Arak Damrani, an expert of Gallente politics working at the MR Certified News. The disenfranchisement of those territories have denied the Agard camp one of their strongest cards. This has strengthened Jacus Rodin's position as top candidate, followed by Garrios. Agard still places high in Evershore's polls, but with the loss of those potential votes, her chances of winning the presidency are slim. So, basically, her major voting base were the very ones that were told that they're not allowed to vote, because her whole position is to give support to the people who are under Caldari occupation, who are the very people who can't vote. The scope zone, blah, 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 blah. She must now fight an uphill battle. Agard herself was outspoken opponent of the bill and called Senator Villard Garrios, supporter of the bill and one of her opponents in the race for president, quote, a villain who ravages our Constitution with no thought of the implications for the people of the Federation. So, yeah, that's some good verbiage. All right, moving on. Fazio withdraws candidacy, endorses Agard. So this guy comes up, gains the military vote, and then steps down and endorses Agard. Amid slipping poll numbers, presidential contender and retired Rear Admiral Darian Fazio has announced his withdrawal from the race, took the opportunity to endorse Celis Agard's candidacy, saying, quote, though Governor Agard and I have disagreed on several issues, I feel strongly that she is an able candidate for the presidency. Further, she has the best interests of the Federation at heart, and I believe that she has the political will to do what's necessary to preserve and defend this great nation. While extremely popular among both serving and retiring military personnel, Fazio's candidacy has been plagued since the beginning with a message that may have been viewed as extreme. But like her support of Celis Agard, or his support of Celis Agard at this point makes sense, right? Rodin represents anti-nationalist or anti-federalist federalization or warmongering kind of mentality. Fazio and Agard are pro-war hawk, basically. Contrasted the candidate Agard and Fazio after a recent debate, saying, quote, the way that these two address crowds publicly is very different. Governor Agard delivers rousing political speeches designed to fire people's adore. Admiral Fazio delivers dry, fact-filled briefings designed to inform people's decisions. Given the similarities between the platforms, Fazio's withdrawal would naturally lend a bump to Governor Agard's numbers. His endorsement was symbolic. However, Governor Agard thanks Mr. Fazio graciously, saying, Admiral Fazio's spirit of service, both in and out of uniform, should be an example for us all. He has been honorable and worthy adversary. Rodin wins. Rodin's closest challenger for president was Governor Celis Agard of the Mise system, who polled 31.2% of the vote. So she is 58% versus 31%. Governor Agard has personally transmitted her concessions, saying, quote, all policies of the president that uphold the interests of the, and pledge her support for all policies of the presidency that uphold the interests of the entire Federation. Some analysis believe that her votes of many frontier worlds excluded from the election process due to the no-vote law may have significantly increased Agard's share in the vote and denied Rodin an outright majority. Others noted that the endorsement of her campaign by Admiral Darian Fazio appears to have had a negative impact on Governor Agard's poll ratings, suggesting that Fazio's hardline militarist image resonated poorly with some sections of the government electoral base. That's interesting. After Fazio's withdrawal from the race, it was Senator Villard Garrios of the Nexus Constellation. Senator Garrios polled with 8.8% of the vote. According to polls of the focus group, Garrios' campaign never quite recovered from what many citizens perceived as confusion and overtly academic platform. Blah, blah, blah. Cool. So Rodin's now president. And Mentis Black announces senatorial resignation. This is about a year later, or like 6 months later, right? Because this is 2010 at this point. Nominations begin for head of Senate. Also nominated Alohn Gardner. Rounding out the leading candidates is Suvio Belleron. Viewed as something of an elder statesman, the conservative Belleron was one of Mentis Black's most stern critics during Black's tenure as head of Senate. Belleron was co-sponsor of the unsuccessful bill that would have forced Black to resign in one of the two positions. Who else? Vance Offeron from the Senate Defense Committee. But Alamont Mize is the named the head of the Senate. Cool. I think that's all we have to say about that one. Senate proposes easing restrictions on Quaife Corporation. This is where things kind of get really weird. A little bit. This is where things start to get a little bit weird. So here we are in the new Senate. Citing economic concerns, Senator Farron Shu confirmed to the Scope today his intention to introduce legislation that eases restriction against Quaife Corporation trading and other operations in the Federation. So, just so we remember... wait. Farron Shu is the senator that spoke out on behalf of the execution against Belleron. Okay? Oh god, have I lost my spot? So that same person is introducing easing restrictions on Quaife. Desire to encourage the Gallente firm to increase focus on its business dealings in the Federation and associated territories. Support for our largest domestic firm during times of economic instability will benefit all Federation citizens, he said. The new legislation, which will be introduced next week, also includes similar concessions for a number of other Gallente corporations. Gallente presidential election enters advanced voting stage. Wait, hold on. Did I get this wrong? Oh, sorry. So then basically nothing of importance happens that I'm going to be tracking here. We can now actually jump ahead 5 years. Okay. So that is all 2010. And that's kind of the wrap up of that first election. So now we jump into 2015 with the next election. At this point, Jacques Rodin has now been in power for 5 years. He won against Celis Agard in 2009. Yeah. Status of Caldari Prime in election spotlight as Shaleen Ramnev speaks. Okay. So for those of you who have kind of zoned out over the last, hour or so, or didn't quite pay, or wasn't here when we talked about today's world news, Shaleen Ramnev was one of the ambassadors that are one of the senators that have shown up to one of the senators that have gone to Intaki to check things out. 1 second. I don't know what's happening. Why can't I pull up my wallet? I keep hearing like wallet trigger sounds. I think people are just buying stuff from me. All right. Sorry, got distracted. All right. In an interview yesterday, former mayor of Arcurio, Shelleen Ramnev, once more placed issue of Caldari Prime at the center of her campaign to become the next president of the Gallente Federation, saying, quote, "These elections are the perfect platform to bring voice to the need of the Caldari Prime's people to a wider spectrum of attention. The Empire's turned our home into a theater for war and conflict, resulting in millions of casualties and incalculable damages to our world and society. We won't allow this anymore, and the cluster must heed the our arguments and hear our voices." Shelleen Ramnev, of the Gallente citizen born on Caldari Prime, is notably both of Caldari and Gallente origins and a former member of the joint resistance movement on Caldari Prime during the Provost occupation. Prior to the occupation, she was mayor of Arcurio, resigning from that office after the declaration of martial law by Provost forces. Ramnev subsequently escaped the city to join the resistance. Ramnev is well known in her defense of the interests and rights of the general population of Caldari Prime over the will of the Empires, taking a line of promoting peace among citizens of both the state and federation. She is considered the main advocate of the early resistance movement, switching from their focus from mounting general counteroffensive to defending people from reprisals during the occupation period. This shift of emphasis evolved the early Gallente resistance movements into the joint resistance movement, composed of both Gallente and Caldari dissidents that opposed the Provost's paramilitary government conduct of the occupation. Political commentators agreed that her rise to popularity has enough momentum beyond Caldari Prime that she may have a strong impact on the Federation-wide elections. Says, quote, "Shelleen Ramnev has been a strong, initially unforeseen candidate, and Caldari Prime is playing an important role for his election in this election campaign, and she has grounds to claim both political and moral superiority in any argument involving the planet. This is a strong asset to any candidate and may give her significant presence. That said, history tells us that personalities with most momentum, particularly on a single issue, are often those who falter and quickly ebb away in the final phase." Ramnev, some far-right nationalist interests have expressed concern about Ramnev's close relationships with various Caldari figures, her origins as the daughter of a registered Ishikone citizen, and her involvement in the joint resistance movement. Speaking yesterday, Ramnev dismissed such concerns as racist babble. She further declared that, quote, "Anyone looking at my history will notice that I've never let my relationship with the Caldari or Gallente citizens, officers, or institutions affect me when making the right choices for the community or my people." Roden speaks at Arcurio election address. Hold on. So, Arcurio is one of the cities on Caldari Prime. It's one of the places where Operation Highlander, which shot down the Shigemuru, the Titan that was in orbit around Caldari Prime. So he was there and gave his own thing. When asked regarding his choice to push through Executive Order 81042 in August 111 prior to his election, he once again reaffirmed his decision, stating that while I admire President Fortin's dedication to the people of the Federation and our values, along with his continued service to Gallente people post-presidency, the situation the administration was faced with at the time required rapid and decisive action to counter the immediate threat to Provost's attack against Federation territory. With many of the media's amused, but immediately relating this remark... Hold on. Following up on his statement, Roden offered a rare quip, remarking that, quote, "Should I be ousted over the course of the coming weeks, I'm sure that the Federation's next president will not have too much to work on her hands with regard to our economic state. Perhaps she'll be able to devote some of that spare time to dazzling us further with her wonderful authoring skills." With many of the media amused, but immediately relating this remark to presidential candidate and our Arcurio resident, Shelleen Ramnev, who at this time remains a close second in the election race, according to the most opinion polls. The president was then bombarded with questions regarding her campaign. In response to the questioning, Roden remarked that, "All friendly jokes aside, while I admire Miss Ramnev's desire to serve the Gallente people and her idealistic approach to federal politics, I believe that from both an economic and military standpoint, what the Federation needs more than ever is a sense of continuity and solidarity in order to continue and grow and prosper over the coming years. We must remember that the Federation is still very much at war and still faces significant threat from the armed forces in the Caldari state. Lest we forget that a little under 2 years ago, the very ground we stand on in the heart of the Federation was under Provost occupancy. Thankfully, direct action from the Federal Combined Armed Forces changed the situation, and we were able to curb the bloodshed for both Gallente and Caldari people with swift and decisive intervention from our military. The Federation must maintain a vigilant but grounded approach to this conflict, and we must not let any form of ideal that may have cloud our judgment or falter our stance on this matter. By the conclusion of the address, which lasted roughly 30 minutes, the president was photographed laying a wreath of black tubaka flowers native to the Calicotta Beaks on the plinth of the Highlander Monument before departing to V'lor. Rodan succeeds and wins once again to the presidency. Rodan secured a solidly 54.2% of all the votes cast, down 4.5 on his previous victory over Selisagard in YC-111. Rodan's victory was followed closely by his closest challenger, Selin Ramnev, who collected 39.7% of all votes. Third in the election was Federation-born Verokyor artist Kellen Ontbad, who secured 5.1 of the votes, with remaining votes dispersed amongst other candidates. When contacted for commentary by the Scope, Selin Ramnev appeared in good spirits, unfazed by election defeat, and smiling as she offered her congratulations to President Rodan, commenting, "While my bid for presidency wasn't successful this time around, I'll continue to do my part for the people of Federation and make every day count. There's always YC-122. Meanwhile, in V'lor, President Rodan lauded his fellow candidates, paying particular attention to Ramnev, commenting that while Miss Ramnev may not have succeeded in her bid for presidency at this time around, it'll be a pleasure to work with her going forward, and my administration for her unfaltering dedication to the Gallente people remain as strong as ever." So, that is the second presidency. 1 year later, mercenary corporations withdraw from Shandeli and Yinmei civil conflicts enter ceasefire following Capsuleer aid efforts. Shandeli, Lusatan 5. So remember, this is the same planet that Celis Agard made her announcement, or her big speech that got so much positive attention. The decades-long civil conflict on the Yinmei homeworld of Shandeli, the fifth planet of the Lusatan system, has entered an uneasy peace following a ceasefire declaration by the Shando overlord houses and resource-rich equatorial zone on the planet. Gallente Federation negotiations are believed to have benefited from the long task of brokering a ceasefire from the recent involvement of Capsuleers from the V'lor Assembly, calling for peace and providing humanitarian aid. Notable mercenary corporations on the conflict: private military forces from Intara Direct Action, Ostrakhan Agency, and Second Expeditionary Group had disengaged in the last week, citing presence of Federation covert and special forces as causes for activating a sovereign non-compete clauses in their contract. Federal Intelligence Office has denied all claims of involvement in the civil conflict, noting that the internal security situation in Shandeli is a matter for the Yinmei authorities and Planetary Assembly. In practice, this is a formula that hands all power to the Shando Overlord caste, and Shandeli Planetary Assembly has no real enforcement powers. The Federation military has suggested that the remaining mercenary corporations, notably the Kanglo Director and Nanmatar Elite, were in fact making headway on behalf of the Consolidation faction of Equatorial Overlords against the Prosperity Drive faction that were employing the notoriously brutal mercenaries of Intara, Ostrakhan, and Sekal. However, it has come about, the ceasefire is sure to bring great relief to a population that has suffered much in casualties, destruction, and displacement during the past few years of the equatorial zone of conflict in Shandeli. So, the Shando is a caste system with, the Yinmei have a caste system, with the Shando being like the overlords of their caste system. Okay? So then, 2 years later, Cursed Exile hijacked broadcast beg forgiveness. Lusatan 6. So Lusatan 5 is Shandeli. A tribe of exiles on Lusatan 6 broke into a structure of a Capsuleer colony and tapped into an FTL relay in order to broadcast a plea for both forgiveness and help today. Lusatan 5, in spite of being benign climate and idyllic landscape, has not been colonized due to its since its terraforming was completed. After a ship crashed into the first settlement, killing all the inhabitants while they celebrated a Yinmei ritual of gate building at the spaceport, the Sando overlord sponsoring the colony abandoned all official attempts to establish a foothold, deeming Lusatan 6 a cursed planet. Sangdo authorities found a new use for the remains of the aborted colonial planet. Criminals earning punishment that strips them of their caste are now disposed of in a penal colony planetside. So, basically, they've been just kind of chucking all of their unwelcomed and unwanted onto this colony, and now they've managed to hijack an FTL communicator, beg for forgiveness, and ask for help. Sangdo Council denounces Capsuleer's encroachment issues ultimatum. Following a broadcast for help, Capsuleer grassroots effort led by the United Neopan Federation and the Arydanika Research Consortium conducted an Asterhus-class Citadel and planet-side colony to provide aid. Yesterday afternoon, the collective effort started receiving citizens with inflamed lymph nodes, neck pain, nausea, and other symptoms. An Adonis Foundation official suggested that while the original tribe of the Maljin shared one contagious condition, these first medical installations are receiving patients for unrelated causes. Laura Light Anna Breza, speaking as a representative of the Capsuleer Cooperative, stated that their efforts is, quote, intended to help all those currently in need of treatment or otherwise suffering, end quote. Neither effort has located Mao nor her tribe. The Capsuleer response offers medical care, so on and so forth. The Council of Authorities from Tsesu and Holong, cognizant of illegal broadcasts from Lusatan 6, recognized the foreign-aligned Capsuleer organization UNF-TEC-A, ARC, and associated parties encroach on the sovereign land of the Yinmei nation, aware that UNF-TEC-A, ARC, and associated parties disregard for conditions for Lusatan 6 colonies, understanding that the Adonis Foundation are present to assist with local disputes, hereby calls UNF-TEC-A, ARC, and associated parties to cease operations on Lusatan 6, remove their planet-side assets, and desist from further interference. If UNF-TEC-A, ARC, or associated parties fail to do so within a 2-week period, the Council will pursue legal recourse in the Aset District Court. So, they're unhappy about trying to help these prisoners. An anonymous Sangdo Lord commented, what the Council should be concerned about... sorry, Dr. Felicine... Hold on a second. Several legal experts responded to the request for comment. The case is a toss-up. Extranational entities, the Capsuleers, aren't entitled to court representation, and the land belongs to the Yinmei nation. No matter how they've chosen to use it, if associated parties apply, they could gain legal standings, but the counter-suit would end up going to the Supreme Court as a constitutional matter. In similar cases, the Supreme Court has ruled against member states negligent in their obligation to provide for their citizens' rights. Whereas the Asit District, the Sangdo, wield enormous influence, the constellation is under their purview. Federal authorities, such as the federal administration, has only the legal authority to intervene in such cases with the permission of the district courts. Anonymous Sangdo commented, what the council should be concerned about is if the plague represents a breach of Lusatan 6's sequestration. The more they focus on this embarrassing episode, the more they draw attention into a potential vulnerability in the system's defenses. Garuni royals negotiate third option in Capsuleer Sangdo dispute. Newly Enzi Beatrice I don't know, and long names, arrived in the Enisate of Central Garun embassies in the Yinmei homeworld early yesterday morning in order to advocate a defense of humanitarian operation spearheaded by Capsuleer organizations ARC and UNF-TEC-A. The royal couple representing the Federation member state significantly persuaded the Sangdo Council to reconsider filing criminal charges against either alliance. Charges being contemplated included trespassing, sabotage, espionage, and the fraudulent use of dummy corporations to obscure extraterritorial status. While the diplomatic discussion was held in closed session, anonymous insiders said that NC's intervention was motivated by the Arydanika Research Consortium's assistance in Luminaire during the Drifter attack on the 6th of January this year. Quote, Sangdo host for their hospitality for heating them. Hold on. Garuni Royal Communication issued a press release They expressed gratitude towards their Sengdo host for hospitality and hearing them. Many spectators noted that both sides of the Lursatan 6 misunderstanding has legitimate concerns. Recognizing that all parties acted with good intent, if not within the letter of the law, the Insenate offers a peaceful solution. If ARC, UNFTAC-A, and associated entities fully remove their assets and discontinue their operation on the planet, the Sengdo Council has agreed to permit both organizations to relocate the people of Lursatan 6 to the Ensenate of Central Garun on Gallente Prime, whereupon they will be provided with all of the rights and protections promised by the federal constitution. A representative of the Sengdo Council collaborated with information containing the Ensenate's press release, then elaborated that regardless of the respective organizations' decisions, legislation within the Yasit District Parliament will pursue a total ban on capsular colonies in the Lursatan system. The representative conveyed the Council's continued disappointment for the disregard capsuleers have shown to the local regulations on colonies and the Council disapproval. So yeah, they're wonderful, fantastic people. All cursed refugees are now in quarantine in Gallente Prime. So yeah, great. So why am I bringing up all of this? Well, why did I bring up the first thing, right? Why did I bring up this guy who got immolated? Well, when this guy got burned, it was Senator Belleron who proposed a bill against it. Well, in this case, when the refugees make it to Gallente, what happens next? Senator Suvio Belleron proposes total ban on capital punishment. Shocked Pikachu face. And on that note, I'm actually going to have to break this off as part 1 because I just heard the door, which means they're here. So, unfortunately, this is going to have to be a part 1 of 2, probably. So, on that note, I have been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Thank you guys so much for coming and checking it out. Thank you for all of my subs. Make sure to like and comment on the posts. Be keeping an eye on my YouTube as I will be putting out more videos and editing them and stuff. Trying to keep up. But unfortunately, I now need to go to help take care of my son. Thank you guys so much for letting me do that and being understanding of everything. So, yeah, without further ado, I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. Oh, don't forget to go check out the last New Eden news that I just put out. It's really good. Put in extra videos. Let me know what you think. Bye! 1 of 2? Question mark. To be continued? Question mark. I have way too... I still have like 2... I've only gone through 2/3 of the tabs. I'll put it that way. All right, bye. One last thing, I now have changed it so that the link, the buddy code link, is now random from the people within my group. So if you just use that link, it'll support one of the people within our group at random. Thank you. Get your million free SP. Bye.
For every city